Ladies, sometimes the best way to remind someone of your worth is to remove yourself from their world. Today, I want to talk about a powerful truth. Make him feel removed from your life, and he'll come running back with regret. Let's dive into the 4 key ways this works and how to reclaim your power. One of the most common traps people fall into when trying to hold on to someone who's pulling away is feeding their ego. It starts innocently, responding quickly to their messages, initiating contact when they go quiet, showing up where you know they'll be, or even just liking their posts to remind them you're still around. It feels like connection, like effort, like fighting for something you care about. But in reality, it sends a completely different message. It says, no matter what you do, I'll still be here. I'm still accessible. I'm still available. And unfortunately, human nature being what it is, when someone knows you're always an option, you stop being a priority. What happens when you constantly make yourself visible, emotionally available, and overly responsive to someone who isn't doing the same in return? You become background noise. He stops wondering about you. He stops asking himself what you're thinking, how you feel, or whether you're moving on. Why? Because he already knows the answer. He knows you're still there. He knows that if and when he decides to come back, you'll be standing exactly where he left you. That certainty removes all the mystery, all the pull, all the tension, and attraction lives in tension. Feeding his ego might feel like love, it might feel like loyalty, but more often than not, it's your fear of letting go dressed up as devotion. And here's the hard truth, no one chases what they think they already have. The more you remind him of your presence, the less urgent it feels for him to make a move. He gets the emotional benefit of your affection without having to step up or recommit. And that's where the cycle begins, where you give more and he gives less and less until you're the one left feeling empty. But here's the thing. When you stop feeding his ego, everything changes. The moment you go silent, the moment you stop reaching out, liking, commenting, showing up, he feels it. At first, he might not react. He may even act like he doesn't notice. But don't let that fool you. Silence has a way of echoing. It creeps in slowly, settling into his world like a fog he didn't expect. He'll notice when your name stops appearing in his notifications. He'll notice when he hasn't heard from you in a while. And most importantly, he'll notice the void where your energy used to be. The beauty of withdrawing your attention isn't just in what it does to him, it's in what it does for you. When you stop focusing all your energy on feeding someone else's ego, you start reclaiming that energy for yourself. You begin to see clearly. You begin to ask, what am I actually getting in return? You start to recognize your own worth. You start to feel the power of being emotionally independent. And from that place of clarity, you become far more attractive, not just to him, but to everyone. You don't have to make a big announcement. You don't have to post a dramatic quote or block him or start a war. The most powerful thing you can do is simply stop. Stop feeding the dynamic that made him comfortable. Stop letting him think he can come and go whenever it suits him. Stop giving him emotional access to you when he hasn't earned it. And when he starts to feel that shift, when he feels you pulling back, something happens. Suddenly, he's not so sure of your feelings anymore. Suddenly, he's wondering where you've gone, why you've gone quiet, who you might be talking to, and whether he's being replaced. That's when regret starts to creep in. That's when he starts thinking about all the little moments he took for granted. That's when he remembers the way your voice sounded when you were excited, the way your eyes lit up when you looked at him, the way your presence made him feel safe and admired. All those things he stopped appreciating become vivid again. But here's the key. The point isn't to make him miss you just for the sake of it. It's not to manipulate or play games. It's to create a reality where you're no longer giving energy to someone who isn't matching you. You're drawing a boundary. You're choosing your dignity over desperation. And if he realizes what he lost and comes back with real intention and accountability, great. If not, you've already begun to heal. You've already started walking back toward yourself. You are not someone who needs to beg to be noticed. You are not someone who should ever feel the need to prove your worth. The right person will feel your absence and take it seriously. They will recognize the difference between your attention and your silence, and they will never want to risk losing your presence again. But they only get the chance to realize that when you stop feeding their ego. and start feeding your own self-worth. When someone pulls away, the natural instinct is to chase, to cling, to try to fix things. But what if the most powerful thing you could do isn't about convincing them to stay, but about turning inward and choosing you? Shifting your focus back to yourself isn't just a healing tool, it's a magnetic force. When you stop centering your world around someone who isn't showing up for you, you begin to remember who you were before you lost yourself in trying to keep their attention. It's easy to fall into a pattern where your thoughts revolve around them, what they're doing, who they're with, what they're feeling. You check your phone for messages that don't come. You scroll through their social media, searching for signs, clues, anything to make sense of their distance. Your mind replays every conversation, every moment, wondering what changed. You begin to doubt yourself, to wonder if you were enough. But all that energy, the thoughts, the overthinking, the emotional labor, it drains you. It pulls you further away from your center. And worst of all, it gives someone else control over your peace. But imagine, just for a moment, what would happen if you redirected all of that energy back into yourself? What if, instead of checking your phone, you picked up a book that inspired you? What if instead of waiting for a message, you signed up for that class you've been putting off? What if you started pouring into your life with the same intensity you once poured into them? Because the truth is, the moment you begin to refocus on you, your world starts to expand. When you prioritize yourself, something shifts. You walk differently. You speak with more confidence. Your energy changes. And that change is felt by everyone around you, including the person who once took you for granted. There is something undeniably attractive about a person who is grounded in their own growth, someone who doesn't need validation from another to feel valuable. When you start living fully, unapologetically, and independently, you become unforgettable. Not because you're trying to be, but because self-focus radiates in a way desperation never can. You see, it's not about pretending you don't care. It's about choosing not to abandon yourself for someone who already left. It's about remembering that you were whole long before they showed up, and you'll continue to be whole long after. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it's hard to let go of the idea of what could have been. But holding on to someone who's slipping away only delays the healing you truly deserve. And healing starts when you put yourself back at the center of your story. Maybe that means taking yourself out on solo dates, dressing up, going out, smiling for no one but yourself. Maybe it's diving into your passions, learning something new, or reconnecting with friends who fill your cup. It could be journaling your thoughts instead of texting them. It could be dancing around your room to songs that remind you of your strength instead of your sadness. Little by little, you reclaim the parts of you that got buried beneath the weight of waiting for them to notice. And what happens when you shift your focus isn't just internal, it echoes. People notice when you stop reaching. They notice when your presence turns into absence, when your warmth becomes mystery. And the one who once felt sure of you, they'll feel that gap. They'll notice that the light you used to shine so freely in their direction is now illuminating your own path. That's when curiosity sparks. That's when regret begins to surface. That's when they may try to come back, not because you begged, but because they finally see what they lost. But whether or not they return is beside the point. The real win is that you've returned to yourself. You've rebuilt your identity not around being chosen, but around choosing yourself. That's a kind of power no one can take from you. And ironically, it's often when we stop trying to be noticed that we become the most unforgettable. So when you feel that pull to text, to call, to fix, pause, breathe, ask yourself, am I acting from love or from fear, from empowerment or from emptiness? Because every time you choose you over them, you grow, you rise, and with each choice, you become more grounded in your worth. You begin to realize that being alone doesn't mean being lonely. It means being free to fall in love with your life again. Healing doesn't happen overnight, but it begins with one decision: to stop abandoning yourself for someone who didn't know how to hold you. You deserve to be the main character in your story, not a background role in theirs. So rise, Reclaim your light. Let them watch as you glow from the distance they created, not to make them jealous, not to make them regret, but simply because you've remembered who the hell you are. Creating emotional distance isn't about pretending you don't care. It's not about being cold or heartless. It's about understanding that closeness, true closeness, must be earned. And when someone has drifted away, when someone has made you feel like an afterthought or an option, they've forfeited the right to have access to your heart in the same way they once did. Emotional distance is a quiet reclaiming of your power. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it's deeply powerful. You can't force someone to appreciate your love while you're handing it to them on a silver platter every day. Sometimes, the very thing that makes them wake up is the silence, the gap, the space they never thought would exist between you. That space says, you don't get to hurt me and still feel safe in the warmth of my love. It's a boundary. One that says your heart is valuable and it won't stay open for someone who treats it like a convenience. Emotional distance begins in subtle, intentional ways. You stop oversharing with them. You stop giving them access to your emotions like they're entitled to them. You stop responding with the same intensity. When they ask how you are, you keep it light. When they try to poke around your feelings, you don't offer your inner world like you used to. Not because you're playing games, but because they lost the privilege of seeing that side of you when they chose to step away without explanation, without care, or without reciprocating. There's a quiet strength in restraint, in not reacting to their breadcrumbs, in not clinging to the hope that they'll notice your pain and come running back. Instead, you become emotionally unavailable, not out of bitterness, but out of self-preservation. You protect your peace the same way you once protected the connection. You stop waiting for closure and instead become your own source of healing. And it's hard, so hard, because your heart still cares. There's a part of you that still wants to believe they'll change, that they'll wake up and remember who you were to them. But creating emotional distance means choosing yourself, even when your heart begs you to choose them. It's learning to sit with the discomfort of letting go of what once felt so right, because holding on any longer is only hurting you. In this distance, you begin to breathe again. You start hearing your own voice instead of the noise of confusion and emotional chaos. You remember how to stand on your own, how to feel steady again. And from that steadiness, you gain perspective. You begin to see the cracks that were always there, but clouded by your longing. You realize that the version of them you held on to might have been more about potential than reality. And yes, they'll feel it. People always feel it when emotional energy shifts. Maybe not instantly, maybe not dramatically, but one day when they reach out and your response is measured instead of eager, they'll pause. When they expect your usual warmth and instead receive calm distance, they'll wonder. They'll start to realize that something's changed, and that change will disturb their comfort because they thought you'd always be emotionally accessible. They thought no matter how far they strayed, your heart would remain open, waiting. But you've grown quietly, beautifully, emotionally. You've learned to separate your value from their attention. You've built a space within yourself that doesn't depend on their validation. And in that space, you've started to heal. Maybe they try to reconnect, maybe they reach out with a hint of regret, but the difference now is that you're no longer emotionally tethered to their whims. You can listen without getting pulled in. You can care without getting consumed. Because emotional distance isn't detachment, it's clarity. It's loving with boundaries. It's showing up for yourself first. The most magnetic thing about emotional distance is that it puts the power back in your hands, not to control the other person, but to control what you allow into your world. When you no longer let someone's inconsistency dictate your emotions, you reclaim your stability, and that stability is deeply attractive. It says, I don't need you to make me feel whole. It says, if you want access to my heart again, you'll have to show up differently. So you continue to rise. You allow your emotions to move through you without letting them dictate your actions. You don't chase, you don't plead, you don't try to convince them of your worth. You already know it, you embody it. And from that place of strength, you move forward. Maybe they'll come back with a different energy, with genuine regret, with a heart ready to give what you deserve. Maybe they won't. But either way, you'll be okay because you've created enough emotional space to see the truth, to hear your own needs, and to no longer confuse love with longing. And in the end, the emotional distance you created wasn't about them at all. It was about you choosing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and self-respect over emotional dependency. And that choice, that's what sets you free. There's a moment in every story of heartbreak where you stop hoping they'll come back and start realizing what it means to let someone feel your absence. Not out of revenge, not out of bitterness, but because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remove your presence so they can finally understand what it meant to have you. Letting someone feel the loss of you is not a punishment, it's a mirror, one that reflects back all the things they once took for granted. Your patience, your loyalty, your laughter, your light, and the deeper truth, you don't stay where you are not valued. It's easy to think that if you just try harder, love louder, prove more, they'll finally see your worth. But some people only understand value through absence. They only recognize what they had when they no longer have it. That's why your silence, your distance, your decision to walk away speaks louder than any words ever could. It shows them you are no longer waiting, no longer hoping, no longer offering your heart to someone who didn't know how to hold it. When someone feels the loss of you, they feel more than just your physical absence. They feel the quiet shift in energy. They feel the missing heartbeat of the connection they assumed would always be there. And maybe at first they don't notice. Maybe they even enjoy the space. But eventually, when the noise settles, when the distractions fade, when the nights get quiet, they'll reach for what used to be there, and it won't be. That's when the regret begins to seep in. But letting someone feel your loss doesn't mean you're hoping they suffer. It means you're finally choosing yourself. It means you're not available to be their emotional safety net anymore. You're not a backup plan. You're not a placeholder. You were a constant, and now you're gone. And that difference is something they'll have to sit with. The truth is, you were never just someone in their life. You were the one who listened when no one else did. You were the one who stayed when things got messy. You were the one who poured love into places they didn't even know were empty. And maybe they got used to it. Maybe they mistook your loyalty for weakness. Maybe they believed you'd always be there no matter how far they pulled away. But now they know. Now they understand what it feels like when your energy, your heart, your presence isn't theirs to lean on anymore. Letting them feel the loss of you means removing your emotional investment. It means not responding to breadcrumbs, not rushing to their side when they suddenly remember your name, not giving them the reassurance they once got so easily. It's about making them feel the emptiness they created, not by force, but by simply stepping away, by refusing to fill in the gaps for someone who didn't try to meet you halfway. And while they sit in that silence, something will begin to echo. The sound of your absence. The absence of your morning texts. The absence of your encouragement. The absence of your love given freely without condition. And that emptiness will whisper truths louder than your words ever could. It will remind them of everything they lost when they treated you like an option. But even more important than what they feel is what you find. Because in that same space where they feel your loss, you start to rediscover yourself. You remember who you are when you're not trying to prove your worth. You remember how full your life can be when it's not centered around trying to get someone else to stay. And slowly, you begin to see that letting go of them was not a loss, it was a return to your peace, your joy, your wholeness. It's a painful realization at first to know that someone had you and didn't choose to keep you, but that pain slowly transforms into power because now you know you are not someone who begs to be kept. You are not someone who stays where they are undervalued. You are someone who loves deeply. And because of that, your absence carries weight. So let them feel the loss. Let them sit in the silence they created. Let them wonder how they let something so rare slip through their fingers. And when the moment comes, and it often does, when they try to return, let your healed heart decide, not your loneliness, not your pain, not your hope for who they might become, but your truth. Because you'll no longer be chasing closure. You'll already have found it in the strength it took to walk away and the freedom you discovered in your own worth. Letting him feel the loss is not about breaking him, it's about building you. And sometimes the greatest love story is the one you write with yourself.